things are real unless you dream they're not. In your dreams, love is the plot, carried on wings of hope. Each of our souls intertwine when we do. Instantly we see it, the time to grow and be it, when everything is pinned on a hold. Let rise the dreams of your heart, that innocent youth, careless and kind, free to roam the breeze in love, only when two brilliantly shine as
Aw, Rob is here.
Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. This is Random Encounter, and welcome to our second Game of the Month post-mortem. This time for Lunar, the Silver Star story complete. Wow, I didn't think I was going to make it through that. Try saying that 5 times fast, but I did it.
I messed up a little bit on my various streams saying that without stumbling either, and I did not see it a lot of the time, so.
Well, here, give it a shot. You've got the floor. You think you got this?
No.
No pressure.
Lunar Silver Star story complete.
Wow!
Okay.
She
That
did
was-
the thing.
Not too bad.
Better than I could do.
Well, we're waiting, sir.
Lunar, Sliver, Star. Oh, no. I fucked up.
Close enough. Close enough. We'll allow it.
Chat,
Anyway,
real
so
quick, we had a volume issue. I just want to make sure that my voice is not overpowering anybody else.
and
If we could
I
get
want to
a,
make sure that I am not too quiet, so you guys can hear my lovely voice at home.
And last time I was just right, so hopefully I still am.
Get a load of Goldilocks over here. But anyway,
Mhm.
guys, would you do yourself a favor and introduce yourselves to the world?
Absolutely. I am Althena. I am the one who did the streaming of Lunar Silver Star Story Complete. I'm getting good at this. And it was my pleasure to do so, and I'm looking forward to talking about that with these guys. But I am one of the administrators at Valiant Gamers, the website that we're doing this for. And that is about it for me.
And I am Selbek. I am the person who watched a portion of each stream, most streams, when I could, and caught up when I had the chance to outside of the live streams. I'm also an admin on the website of valiantgamers.com. Please visit.
Well, to be
And
fair,
I'm
you did
I'm
have
excited
a you did have a really busy month. The
I've had a really busy year, man. It's been crazy.
it's been a wild time to play new games. So, did you finish the new Final Fantasy VII?
No, I'm
What?
I'm still on chapter 12. Oh, God forbid, I have given up so much sleep this month to try and pack in as much time with that game as possible. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think I might be 100 hours clocked in on the game at this point, but still, I'm a few chapters away from the end.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you judge that Final Fantasy VII gives you enough chicken baiting and chasing, or do you think that it leaves something to be desired? Because I saw some hot chicken action the night that I tuned in to watch you play it.
Ooh. Which one was that?
Oh, that was the one you were making a chicken follow a box. Really riveting gameplay.
Oh, disgusting. Worst freaking side quest in the entire game. That if that doesn't turn you away from the game, you're in for one hell of a game. Let me tell you. That man. So the game itself. I mean, if you want to compare it to that side quest, yeah, the game itself is worth pulling the box around.
Looks like K-Granimus agrees with you.
Yeah, it's asinine for no reason. It's like they said, we want to throw in as much as we can into this game. What can we do? And someone's like, well, you can make a chicken follow a box. And they just did it. They just said, fuck it. We'll throw it in somewhere.
Is Tetsuya Nomura,
I'm so sorry.
Is he directing the game this time around?
Yeah.
That is something that he would be like, yes, put it in now.
Make sure it's linked to friendship somehow.
But I mean, all in all, you're having a good time. That's all that really matters, right?
Oh yeah, there's a ton of side stuff. There is more side stuff than there is the meat and potatoes with the main story. I think they said you could probably finish the main story in about 40 hours, but you'll clock in like 120 plus if you try to do everything.
I got you.
So let's.
But for what that's worth, that's amazing. Let's switch gears. Let's get back into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say we're not here to talk about Final Fantasy. That will have its day.
Everybody in chat just got debated. I'm gonna switch over. It's gonna be like the transition from black and white TV to color, where like all the graphics just changed. It's like, what the fuck, man? I canceled my plans for tonight for this.
Welcome to the Lunar stream. Let me tell you about all the strife I've had with these clouds.
All right. So, back on track.
All right. So, chat, how many of you got a chance to tune in for the streams? Because I have to say, it was a lot of fun watching you play, Nicole. I didn't get a chance to sit down and play along. I might actually be doing that with the next game, but it was a lovely blast from the past. And I assume you had a good time doing it too.
I did, and I definitely look forward to talking about it when we give our little reviews. But it was definitely not what I expected it, but not in a bad way. So yeah, I'll touch more on that when we get to the review segment. But no, I had a lot of fun playing it, and I'm actually kind of sad that it's over. I was looking forward every Monday and every Thursday to sit down and play, and between that, I enjoyed like leveling up and doing a little bit of grinding to get my party up so that when I wouldn't waste everyone's time when I came back to streaming. And I don't know, it was just a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing it. So
before the stream this month, when was the last time you played through the entire game?
Oh, it has been years. I probably last played it before I played Silver Star Harmony, which was the PSP remake. And I think that was probably the last time I played the game of the Silver Star story.
Gotcha.
Was the PSP version, which was really good, and I would definitely recommend it for anyone who wants to play it. I think, as janky as some of the voice acting was, it did lose a little bit with the loss of the Working Designs cast, especially Galleon's voice. But it still was a really good game.
Yeah, I was about to say, I wonder what that guy's up to these days. Kojiro, welcome. I see you guys in chat here. Kieran / so we're going to be referring to Galleon, but we also have a friend that goes by Galleon, much like you, Nicole, go by Althena. Galleon, I've got a treat for you here in a second. So you just stay tuned. I have to say, if I were to go back and play the game now, I played through pretty much all of Silver Star Story back in the day, minus about the last couple of hours. And I've watched you play Silver Star Story complete again. So Harmony would probably be my choice if I wanted to go through and replay it.
Yeah, I would recommend it.
I agree.
Okay. So I've been waiting so much for this. Galleon, we have a wonderful surprise for you, and it's really going to be kind of a surprise to everybody. So one of the goals of Valiant Gamers is we love not only video games, but also the discussion of video game music. And Lunar's got a lot of memorable tunes, and we're going to be listening to some of those tunes that we picked out for you guys here shortly. But there's one in particular that's near and dear and close to my heart. And if you guys just stay tuned.
This is for you, Galleon.
Absolutely.
myself in a 5-star hotel, relaxing in a sauna.
Do you, in this picture that you've conjured for yourself, do you have Snoop Dogg dancing next to you? Because that's what really ties it all together. No, not so much. Okay, so yeah, I spent way more time last night working on that than I should have, but you guys actually came here to listen to some music. So give us about 20 to 25 minutes of your time. We have picked out, I think, the 6 tracks that we think are the most standout of the entire soundtrack, and I think you guys will agree too. So stick around, we'll be right back.
day into the starlit night. Foolish dreamers turn their gaze, waiting on a shooting star. But what if that star is not to come? Will their dreams fade to nothing when the horizon darkens most? We all need to believe there is hope. Is an angel watching closely over me? Can there be a guiding light I've yet to see? I know my heart should guide me, but there's a hole within my soul. What will fill this emptiness inside of me? Am I to be satisfied without knowing? I wish then for a chance to see now all I need desperately is my star to
All right. Thank you so much for bearing with us. I know that was longer than the Vagrant story, but hold on. The Vagrant story segment of the last postmortem, but we had a couple that we couldn't decide on, so we were like, screw it, let's play them all. But going back to what Skunkworks said, and hi, by the way, glad to see you.
Did you save the game? Stop what you're doing right now and save before you continue.
All right, guys, I'll be
I
right
just
back.
lost the game. Fuck.
Oh, I just lost.
Be right back. I'm gonna go back and save the game. But shoot, I lost the game too. Damn it. Anyway, but yeah, the translation of the English version has the kind of stinky smell, but nostalgic smell of Victor Ireland all over it. Yes, I will save the game. Don't worry about that, Skunkworks. But he definitely wrote a lot of the localization of Lunar Silver Star story and Lunar the Silver Star and pretty much everything for Working Designs. And you know, the theory is that they wanted to keep the traditional spirit of what was being said, but make it kind of fit for the English or American audience. I guess you can take the lyrics for what they mean for this is, you know, obviously Luna is kind of in a very confusing place and she wants to find her path, and, you know, she's on the way to a new place and is on that path and is hoping that, you know, she will find that. But yeah, this isn't a philosophy podcast, so I won't go into that. But overall, we picked some songs that we liked from the Lunar soundtrack, ones that were either standout to us or were catchy. There was, you know, Maribia, great song. I don't want to go over them all, but anyway, I really, really liked this soundtrack. It's been playing either in my head or in my Winamp or my CD player for years and years and years. I think that Iridari really did a good job making it kind of a very 90s anime kind of soundtrack, but also it did retain some elements of like the fantasy RPG, which I liked. You saw the fantasy a little bit more in his other works like Grandia, but still this one did touch on that. So
yeah, we will definitely, during the review, at least one of us, probably all of us, will be discussing at some length it's the word I want to use, the influence that Working Designs has had over its localizations. And that's both a good and a bad thing. As a matter of fact, here momentarily, we will be watching some extra content that actually came with the game in the form of a video CD that was the making of LUNAR. And you'll get to meet this eponymous Victor Ireland and the rogues gallery of people that worked for Working Designs to bring this game to stateside. I think it's a little bit more common these days to have localization teams be a more tightly knit part of a game's development cycle. But back in the day, we were lucky to get any kind of localization team at all for video games, and a lot of games from the 90s and late 80s had awful, terrible translations by people that didn't speak English natively, or probably didn't speak Japanese very well, and people were just trying to meet somewhere in between to give something that was somewhat playable. I think that was probably one of the reasons that it took so long for RPGs to really catch on here in the West, is just sometimes they were just downright undecipherable. So for better and worse, I think Working Designs was so interested in seeing these games come over that even if you disagreed with some of the changes that they made, they were invested in, making them accessible to the people that played them. And I guess I can't really be mad about that, right?
I am definitely not mad about it. Overall, I think Working Designs did a lot more good than harm.
But that's kind of more of that's a general commentary that we'll get into a little bit later. But in particular, in terms of the music, Meribia was one of the tracks that I picked, the other one being Magic Weapon Nash. And I don't know why. I mean, Meribia is not even close to being one of the best tracks on the game, but for some reason, and I think it's just pure nostalgia, every time I think of LUNAR, I think of that song. I remember just all the time that I spent in Meribia and just how pleasant the music is. Like, you can say that for a lot of the tracks from the soundtrack. The music is it just makes you feel good. It just makes you feel comfortable. And the first time that I played LUNAR, we were in the process of moving to Texas, and Mom was out looking for a house. We had a hotel room. While she was house shopping, I was so sick. I was so god-awful sick. All kinds of just unbelievable things. It was terrible. I won't go into the details, but needless to say, I was away from home. I felt miserable. And the only comfort that I had was sitting there playing LUNAR in my hotel room, just to forget about how bad I felt. And the game really was successful at that. And all these years later, every time I think of Meribia, I think of how bad I felt at that time, but how good the game was at making me forget about all of that.
That's sweet.
Yeah, that's just real talk. But
I'd like to insert something there, if you don't mind. I was going through a lot during the first time I played LUNAR. As for those of you who know me and you know what I was going through in my late teenage years, it wasn't really the best time for me. But it really hadn't started getting really bad yet when I first played LUNAR. And it was kind of like the last game of my childhood before I was kind of forced to grow up suddenly. And it kind of was there for me when I transitioned from that teenage girl into, an adult. And there's something special about this game, man. I don't know exactly what it is, but there is something that just kind of seeps into your bones and stays with you for life.
Right.
To the point where, the the handle Althena has followed me for the past 20 something years. I don't know. It was just very impactful for me. So I totally get what you're saying about that. And I used to ride my bike through the streets of my neighborhood and listen to, like, in my head, listen to the Berg theme. So yeah, it sticks with you. So
Yeah. Berg is just pure idyllic hometown vibes. When I sat down writing my notes for my review of the game, I spent a lot of time thinking about the music, and I really think of all the things that makes LUNAR special, it's that combination of the soundtrack, of the sound design, and the graphics that come together to give you this comforting vibe. And I guess it's hard for me to say how much of that vibe is the game itself and really just how much of it is the nostalgia. It's really hard to kind of separate yourself from that objectively. And I don't know for sure that somebody who's never touched LUNAR before, if they would have the same feeling, but I really hope so. I mean, I think that the game is so pleasant to look at, but it also just sounds so good. You know how, like, people watch The Office and Grey's Anatomy and other shows? It's their comfort show. It may not be the best show, but it makes them feel good. LUNAR is definitely your comfort game. Like, I think that's fair to say. And I definitely could see this being somebody else's comfort game too.
I remember the first time that I booted up the emulator and watched the intro for the first time on stream, and I watched the opening cutscene, and it came to the point where it flashed through all of, like, the main characters, and it was just like all of my friends.
Yeah.
It had been so long since I'd seen them, and all of my friends were still there, and it was definitely a very emotional moment. So
yeah, I think the only complaint that I have about the music is that some of the tracks are kind of mid, but frankly, the biggest problem is some of them are just too short, and and they loop so quickly. And, like, I was thinking in particular that organ piece that plays in one of the dungeons sounds really cool, but if it were just like 30 seconds longer, like, it would just hit just right. It's so close.
Or if it didn't loop every time you went through a door, and just like, yeah,
this is kind of off topic, but I've spent a lot of time lately playing a game that every time you transition into a new zone, it just, even if the other zone that you transition into has the same music, it just stops the song right in the middle of its tracks and starts playing from the beginning again. I hate it.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, so that's probably my only complaint about the soundtrack. We've done a lot of talking. Scott, what did you think of the soundtrack?
Well, you were talking about a perspective of someone that's fresh into this, and that's me. I had never even really cared to dive into the game growing up. But having gone through the story now as nearly 40-year-old man who's been through so many stories told through video games at this point, I still want to say it felt fairly impactful. Now, it doesn't resonate with me like it would someone who played it in their teenage years.
Right.
But if I had the attention span to give to it back in my teenage years, I feel like I'd be in the same boat.
Yeah, I mean, this game, it definitely screams young adult. Like, that's how that whole thing is a genre of literature now. And this would, I think, fit in perfectly. Like, if you were to take LUNAR, turn it into a book, you could put it in the young adult section and it would fit in perfectly. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I think it had an audience for sure.
Well, it was definitely geared towards prepubescence in some way. Maybe I shouldn't use that term. I don't know. But I think they did a really good job. Just thinking back at how I would have received this as a teenager when this game came out, I think they did a really good job connecting to someone of a someone in their teens, someone in their double digits, just someone who can sit and pay attention to the story and power through it.
Yeah, that's all totally valid.
To me, that says a lot. Like, all the Final Fantasies are great, but they're telling their own story. They're doing things in a way where they want you to be interested in their story. Whereas here with LUNAR, it really feels like I forget the guy's name. You guys know the guy's name who created the story. It really feels like he was trying to tell a story that could connect to the demographic they were gearing towards.
So the people that create the story, I think we were more talking about the localization team at Working Designs. Victor Ireland is responsible for that, and we're actually going to see him momentarily in that video. But we'll also see some appearances from the original development team too and get their perspective as well. I want to say so much about the game, but at this point I really just kind of wanted to touch on the sound of the music first before we go forward, because for people that are not familiar with this game but also not familiar with Working Designs, I think this is about to provide some context that is well needed. Are you guys ready to watch the making of LUNAR?
Before you do that, I would just like to say hello to AJ Swimmer. I saw you chatting there for the first time,
Hello.
so welcome to the stream, and I'm glad you could make it. To everyone watching, this is the man who originally lent me LUNAR Silver Star Story Complete. So the impact that it had on my life was directly this guy's fault. So I'm glad to see you. I'm glad you could make it. Anyway, now I'm ready.
Well,
It's
I'm
your
also
fault we're here today.
Yeah, I'm also
And
glad
we're
you can
very
make it
glad
too.
for it.
Also glad you can make it too. You are a mention. We greatly appreciate all the support that you've shown us for this stream and this postmortem. So without further ado, let's load up some Making of Goodness. I will be keeping our mics on here. I'm going to be at a slight advantage here with the delay, so I'll try to keep my commentary out until you guys have had a chance to say your piece. Make sure it's...
I actually cheated, and this was part of the long play I used as part of my catch-up.
It's a boy thing.
I formed a company with
boy
Mr.
thing.
Kazunari Tomi, and the company's name is Studio Alex. We went to Game Arts to promote our business, and we told them we would like to make an RPG game
Valiant
with a
gamers.
compelling story that was something different from other games that existed at that time.
やってみてね。
After
I
playing the
second
LUNAR
that.
game, if people would
But,
say, we have to live in a more positive
Well, you heard it
fashion,
here first.
live our
It's a boy
lives
thing.
looking to the future, that is the kind of game I wanted to
Bye,
make.
guys.
Just kidding.
This was the motive that inspired
She can be
the
a boy.
LUNAR game.
It's 2024.
Yeah, this great story, these characters that you cared about, and you were interested to see how they got together at the end, Alex and Luna. It played out more like a movie than a game because of the animated sequences along the way. It kept getting the player back into the game.
A large percentage of the games that come to the US originate in Japan. They start in Japan and they're reworked for the US audience. We were the first independent CD-ROM publisher in the US. So I'd heard about LUNAR, and I really had no preconception about what it was. I was thinking of some sort of moon game.
When we saw the Sega CD version of LUNAR, we knew that was
that's the guy.
a
Okay.
game we wanted to do. It was a great game.
They had a
I have a
CD-ROM
very
system
old
that was single
friend
speed,
who
150K a second.
was
You
an
could only
intern
spool so
for a
much data
while
off
at
of that.
Working
So you
Designs,
couldn't get really
and,
involved
I tried to
animation.
get him
You had
on
a
the
limited
stream
amount
at
of
least
video
once, but it
memory, a
didn't
limited color
happen.
palette.
But,
There was lots of limits.
He has
CD ロムでないと
pinball
ね、
that
や
he
はり
stole
ちゃん
from
とした
Victor
ストーリーの
Ireland's
ゲームは
pinball
作れませ
machine.
んから。
Games with good stories cannot be made without CD-ROM.
Victor Ireland's firm
And because of that, LUNAR started with Sega CD, then a
It's a
Saturn
shame that it was a
version,
pinball.
and then the
not something else.
PlayStation version. Whenever there's a better means of expression available, we will use it to express things better. And that's why we made the PlayStation version.
それは
People might ask a question such as, which version is the authentic version?
Yeah.
Sega
Video may
CD
be a little
or
too
Sony
loud.
PlayStation? Or is there any difference? But I think they both reflect the story of LUNAR. I believe the LUNAR world actually exists. The person who tells the story may change. Before, Mr. Sega CD tended to often forget things, and he didn't pay attention to the details of things. But nonetheless, he was the storyteller for the first LUNAR. This time, Mr. PlayStation, who is more sensible, smarter, and has a better memory, with more capacity for expression, told the history of the LUNAR world. The first storyteller sometimes forgot some of the characters, or told the ending in rather finalistic terms, while the new storyteller told us much more.
My friend. Sega CD 版のルナからこの
Since the Sega CD version of LUNAR to the PlayStation version of LUNAR, we have rewritten the latter half completely.
大きなのは
The biggest difference is the description of the heroine, Luna. In the Sega CD version, where the main character, Alex, leaves the island, they part. If that's the case, though, we felt that people might not feel sympathetic toward the heroine, so we changed that in the revised scenario.
あと登場人物を増やしました。
We also increased the number of characters in the game. The development of the enemies was a little weak, so we added
最
some
初の
enemies.
セガ CD 版のルナだと多分アニメシーンは2分とか
I believe there were only 2 or 3 minutes of animation for the original CD version, but now there is about an hour of animation.
で声優さんボイスアクターも
As for the voice actors, in the first version of LUNAR there were only 4 actors, but now there are about 15 voice actors.
多分15人ぐらいのボイスアクターになっていると思います。
In terms of imagery, there was quite a bit of upgrading, so there's almost no comparison.
There's been quite a few changes actually to the scenario in LUNAR. Definitely the characters are older. There's no age actually given, but they're definitely older than the first one. And I think that was to strengthen the love aspect of it. But also, another reason they were aged, as I understand it, is because the people that had played the original had aged too. And so they wanted to keep it so they could still relate to these characters. Wokusan, his art designs are great. Huge fan of what he's actually done with the LUNAR characters and what he's also done with anime, because he doesn't just do game characters. He actually is involved with manga and anime. He's done some very popular stuff in Japan, like Giant Robo animation series.
で、特別なそのトレーニングですか?
As for special training, I really haven't done anything such as going to a specialized animation school or learning from someone else in
誰
particular.
かに習ったということはないですね。全部
Everything I learned by actually doing the work.
ばかりです。その時自分が、
To design the costumes, I suppose I was inspired by what I saw in movies, magazines, and people around the city.
ルーナのスカーフなんかは当時
For instance, the scarf Luna wears is an idea that was inspired by a nurse's outfit at the dentist I was going to at that
出
time.
まして、これは
This is the storyboard for the Silver Star story.
本手ですね。で、ざっと
There are about 45 to 46 scenes here.
で、これで
Once this is accepted, we start the actual animation by placing orders for the scenes to animators.
今回のリメイク版のルナからは、デジタルペイント
For the remake of LUNAR, digital paint was used instead of celluloid.
上がってきた動画を
The drawings were first scanned and then painted with a specialized software.
ということで、一連の動く絵ができるわけですね。で、それができた
And sequenced as movie clips.
と
Once that is done, the next steps are taken. Editing, retaking, and soundtracking, just like any other animation.
あとの作業は、普通のアニメーションと同じような流れで行われています。戦場のルーナっていうシーンでかなり
Computer graphics, CG, was used a lot in the scene of Luna on the boat, such as this part where the ship moves.
動くところとか
The ocean is a regular 2D background. The ship is mostly all
海とかはこ
CG.
れ二次元の普通の背景なんですけども、手書きの
Also, these night bugs, somewhat like lightning bugs, are done in CG.
一種の 3D のその利点っていうのは手書きでは
The advantage of 3D is that it is possible to create objects that are difficult to draw by hand.
大元の作業を発注します。
First, we give the layout to the 3D person, who creates something that moves like
こう
this.
いうふうに動くものを作ります。
We print that out as a wireframe, and we give that printout to the animator.
としたのがこれぐらいあって
For one scene of Luna singing,
これをア
there
ニ
was
メータ
this
ーに
much
渡して
printout.
作ってくださいとアニメ
We gave it to the animators, and we asked them to complete it within a week or so. But it actually took 2 months.
その3DCG は確かソフトイメージ
The 3D CG was rendered using soft
ソフトイ
image.
メージでレンダリングされた
We
ものと
combine images rendered by
マ
soft
クロに
image
を
with the images that are colored with the
で
Macintosh.
合成して、部分的なところでタッチ
Then we
して
do partial
直
touch-ups.
してそれを、
We then complete the process
それを
using
まあ
QuickTime, etc.
とかで、完成
We
させ
edit the QuickTime
で
movies
え
using
ー
Adobe Premiere.
プレミアとか使って編集します
やっぱり普通に
Usually, when you are involved in a production as an animator, your involvement is very restricted.
作業する領域が限定されちゃうんですね。ルナにおいてはその、プロット
But in the case of LUNAR, I was able to be involved in not only the plot, but also the scenario, and even part of the game making.
関わることができたんで。
他のゲームですと大概の場合あまり仲良く仕事をす
In
る
other games, most of the time it is difficult for animation staff to work so well with the game staff.
それがルナに関しては本当に
With LUNAR, we could both work well together, argue well
協
with
力し
one
合え
another.
たし議論も戦わせることができたし
The long period of time involved in this project
長い
allowed
期
us
間
the opportunity to exchange ideas
お
with
互
one
い
another.
の意見っていうのが交換できたので
We all gained a lot
非常
from
に
each
収
other.
穫になりました
で全体のスケジュールが
Objectively speaking, the boat song is not a scene that is directly related to the game.
関係ないということで
When our schedule was getting a bit
切ってもいいんじゃ
tight,
ないかという話
it
が
was
確かに
suggested
出
that
ま
we
して
cut it for that reason.
あとそのシーンがある
By
ことで
having that scene,
ゲーム
I
とか
thought it would be
普通
possible
に
to
アニ
show
メーションで
Luna's spirit through a more interesting approach than those used by typical games or animated
情
illustrations.
感を描けると思いました。
I insisted very strongly to keep this scene,
それは主張しまして、
and luckily the producer and others accepted my
皆
opinion.
さんも僕の熱に負けたのか
Music makes up the world of Lunar. The magical spells are cast based on the musical songs, and that's pretty much your first scene with Luna. Is she is singing, so the music is a very important part of this game.
音楽は本当に大事だと思ってます。
I think the music is very
そした
important.
らあるシーン
There is a good chance that 70 to 80% of a scene's emotional impact can be attributed to the music.
例えば
For example, this time we had the very talented Mr. Iwadari from the very beginning, which was very lucky, I
岩
think.
垂さんっていう優れた作曲家
The music he makes moves people's hearts.
その前身である、メガ CD
I was in charge of the music for the first LUNAR, the Mega CD, LUNAR the Silver Star. And since then, I have been in charge of all the music in the LUNAR series.
Iwadari does the actual music composition for LUNAR, a number of other things too, but in this particular case, he does the composition for LUNAR. His company is 2-5. He works very closely with Isao Mizuguchi, who does the arrangement and the lyrics and such for the songs.
シナリオライターとか
The scenario writers and graphics people will tell us specific places they would like to use the lyrics.
歌を使いたいんだけど
I will first ask them what kind of scene that is.
例えばその
For example, what state of mind is the heroine in when she sings that song?
歌を歌わなきゃいけないの
In what situation does that particular song come out of her mouth?
いますよね歌はそのヒロインの僕が書いて
The song is the heroine's, though I write the song. For the listeners, the song is sung by the heroine naturally in that situation.
前作の、
LUNAR the Silver Star included about 38 songs or pieces of music.
作ったんだけれどもその中の最も中核となる
And among them, a main song emerged, which was the song of the festival that Luna sang by the natural spring.
で、この曲があったんだけどもこの曲のイメージ
This was a very important song in the game. And the image it created was one I wanted to keep. All the other songs were created according to the image of Luna that existed in my mind. These amounted to over 100 pieces of music. It took about half a year to complete it. After I made the first song, however, there was a layoff for a hiatus. But I wrote over 100 pieces of music. So I needed about half a year. Usually when people complete an RPG game, they feel it was great. But for LUNAR, because I received postcards, I know it is true. I get comments like, "I cried for the first time after finishing an RPG." I look at the mail from the users of the game and at the home page, and I see descriptions of them saying something like, "The tears come out when I listen to the opening song, Wings." People seem to be attracted by songs. And I hear these messages that say, "When I listen to the Wind Nocturne, it exposes the heart bare." There are some battle songs that people seem to like that make them feel heartwarming.
Things you have to isolate when you're looking at a Japanese game, as far as what's its suitability for the US, is the language, because there is some stuff that's acceptable in Japanese language even, that you can't use in the US without getting a stern rating. For example, in Cosmic Fantasy II, which is one of the games we did for TurboGrafx, which is a pretty innocent game overall, there was a scene where one of the characters flipped off another one in a close-up. So we had to change that to she was shaking her fist.
We pretty much take the main plot points, throw away the rest of it, and write it in an American style with a bunch of cultural references that people can relate to. Even though it's set in this mystical world, you still have these pop cultural references that allow you to get an attachment to the characters. And people tend to get more involved in something that they can relate to.
One of the things we're known for now is the translation. The quality translation, the fluid way that people speak, the natural way that people speak.
If we hurry, we may be able to sneak in without waking the dragon. Then we can get a fantastically huge diamond from its lair worth thousands and thousands of silver, making us filthy, stinking rich and very popular in the process.
In our games, we always try to improve it, add some gameplay element that improves the game, makes it more fun for the user, or easier to play. We added some personality to some of the characters, like Might's Lab. You had this guy in this tower, this inventor, and he's all up in this tower, and you have to go through this huge thing to get this maze to get up there. And we're like, well, why was he so isolated? You know, he's like a hermit, a recluse. And so in the US version, which wasn't in the Japanese one, we had him suffering from tremendous body odor. So that's why he had to be isolated. And so he makes comments of that ilk.
You're trespassing! Go away!
I'm sort of a professional hacker, right? They've already written the code, but it doesn't really work for English. They have, the Japanese character set has thousands, tens of thousands of characters, whereas in English we have a relatively small defined set of characters, but the words tend to be longer because it takes more characters to express a thought. They gave us a space of 38K to actually put all the text for a particular section of the game, and the English text can get up to 72K in size, so I had to write data compression to squish that text down so it would actually fit into memory. And that's been a major battle for me.
Welcome to the Magic Guild of Vane, Alex of Berg. I am Gallion. My apprentice Nash speaks quite highly of you. He said you cleared the trail for the White Dragon. I didn't make it.
The actors for the first one were John Truitt, who's the voice of Gallion, and probably the most well-known of all of them.
He said you cleared the trail of the White Dragon. Is that true? Voice from Galleon, you sort of have to rest your body into it and enunciate every single word clearly and just enjoy every delicious sound. I didn't realize, when you see the people making cartoons sometimes, you think they look kind of ridiculous because they've got their hands moving up and down and they're bouncing and they're jumping around. But you actually have to do that with your body in order to get the right sounds and the right inflections coming out of your voice.
To get the right performance, usually it doesn't take much more than saying, this is your motivation, this is what's going on here. If you're jumping or whatever, do a little jog in place to get yourself out of breath a little bit and then do it. But sometimes you have to do extreme methods, and the favorite story of John is the warm milk from Wendy's.
We were filming something and I was supposed to be choking or coughing on something, and we came up with this wonderful idea that milk would do the trick, and I think that I must have downed something like 1.5 gallons of milk while I'm trying to hack up all this sputum and all this phlegm and all this stuff that would make it sound perfect. I was a little sick after that.
You come in and you kind of memorize your lines first of all, because a lot of times you have to match the video and you have to lip sync it exactly.
I mean, you've got to really, really fit the voice into the action, into the allotted time that you have, because the animators have done their job first, and then you have to go back and you have to fit your stuff in with what they've done. So yeah, it can be really, really tough.
Victor, he's my husband's best friend and they've been buddies since high school. He called me up because he needed a little cutesy voice and a little mousy voice. And that's what I have, so.
Jackie Powers does the voice of Null again.
Well, it's really exciting to come in and there's a huge sound booth and people and cords and contraptions everywhere. It's easy and it's comfortable for me to get into the part of Null, being that he's mischievous and a close friend, and it seems like a likable character overall.
And Ashley Angel did the voice of Alex in the first one. Originally, we were going to probably ditch his voice because he had grown up too much, and after having heard his voice again, I'm like, he doesn't age that much, maybe we can use his voice, because it's kind of nice because the character has grown up in the game, and if his voice is a little bit older too, that's okay.
I think I'm a lot like Alex. I really do. In what way? I like to be the hero. I like to be the guy that gets the attention at the end, and I like to be the guy that saves everybody. Especially Luna, and she's a pretty hot cartoon. It's a lot of fun, being in the recording studio, doing this kind of thing, being the voice of, a cartoon, basically. It's acting, and it's what I love to do.
And then Hal Delahousse does the voice of Quark, which is best dragon voice, hands down, ever. Cinema, anywhere. Take your pick. It's a great dragon voice. He's pitch shifted, obviously, but he has a nice rumble to his natural speaking voice so that when he talks, it's just grr, comes right out.
You are the first adventurers to visit me in a long time.
A dragon is huge, and it's needed to sound huge. So by pitch shifting his voice down, and of course, usually in most cases, the dragon's in this nice big cave, and so that lends itself to some nice big reverb, and when we get done with it, you believe that is the dragon's voice. In the case of Null, we pitch shifted her voice higher in order to make it sound like it was coming out of a little creature rather than out of a normal woman's voice. It also helped mask whether or not it was male or female.
Alex, couldn't you hear me? I've been flying around for the last half hour looking for you.
But I should have known you'd be here.
Try a little more like you knew where it was.
Alex, couldn't you hear me? I've been flying around for the last half hour calling for you.
But I should have known you'd be here.
One of the best things about Victor is that he doesn't write the script and then it's etched in marble, okay? The product isn't finished until it's in the can.
If we're getting there and we're looking and saying, there's not enough syllables, or there's too many syllables, or what's another word for, how can we say this a little differently because it's not long enough, it's too long, whatever. And he's always open to suggestions if we need a new word, something like that.
Okay, let's try that scene 3 again with Luna.
Victor's a demanding person, and lots of times to get the line just right for him, you have got to do it 30, 40, 50 times, however many times it takes.
And we'd spend so much time on one line, so I have to hand it to him for that, for being so patient.
One of the lines happened to be a screaming part, and we did that too many times for my own good. I think we had to wait a while because my voice kind of went away.
We may have 2, 3, 4 takes of a particular line, and then usually Victor and I will sit down and he'll listen through them and pick 1 or maybe 2 choices of a particular line. Then once those have been selected, I'll go and drop those into the game where they belong and see if we got any problems, begin lining up the dialogues and adding sound effects and maybe nipping and tucking if we're a little long or a little short, something like that, to match up all the lips.
They make fun of me sometimes, but it helps lighten things up so that it's not so serious and hard to do. So we clown around a lot.
There's been times when an actor and actress, they're just, you can tell they're uptight and we need them to loosen up for something or other. So we'll play certain sound effect CDs.
When he tries to make you laugh, he puts fart noises in the microphone.
I haven't found a person yet who could keep a straight face during a certain set of sound effect CDs.
Wishing on a dream.
Jenny Steigel does the singing voice of Luna. She has a boat song in the second one that wasn't in the first game, and she does the singing for that. She also does the singing for the opening song, too.
I've always wanted to sing. The boat song, more or less, is talking about Luna. She's not sure where she's headed, what she's doing with her life, and she has a bunch of questions about herself, and she's talking about that in her song.
When we originally started translating the games, I used to try and stick as closely as possible to the translated lyrics of the songs. But somewhere along the way I figured out that that really didn't convey the emotion of the songs as well. So I decided that if I took into account the author's original intent plus the feeling that I got from the scenes and just rewrote the lyrics entirely, we ended up with a much better overall song, which is true in the case of Luna with the boat song, which the English version turned out to be a much more melancholy and reflective song than the Japanese one.
Wishing on a dream that seems far off, hoping it will come today. Into the starlit night, foolish dreamers turn their gaze, waiting on a shooting star. But what if that star is not to come? Will their dreams fade to nothing when the horizon darkens most? We all need to believe there is hope. Is an angel watching closely over me? Can there be a guiding light I've yet to see? I know my heart should guide me, but there's a hole within my soul. What will fill this emptiness inside of me? Am I to be satisfied without knowing? I wish then for a chance to see now all I need is my star to
Are you happy, Victor, people?
We're pretty much control freaks on everything because we want to make sure that from start to finish the game is handled correctly and properly. By doing this deluxe packaging that we're doing, it becomes a collector's item. We have people that still have our packaging from TurboGrafx, still have our games from Sega CD, and they keep them because it was great packaging. And with LUNAR being the great game that it is and one of our personal favorites that we've done, we wanted to create packaging that the consumer wanted.
We play games. We're fans ourselves. We just happen to be fans who make games.
Pretty much that's a standard requirement for being an employee at Working Designs is you have to like games and you have to play the games.
When I've played the game, it's probably been the biggest thing of realizing, hey, we did some good work here. We're able to sit back and look at it.
とにかくLUNAR の各プロデューサーは
Each producer involved with LUNAR sought such a high level.
こう描いていくかということには随分神経を使ってきましたし、まあルナが好きだと言って
I feel that the people who are very fond of LUNAR are able to sense that fact in some way or another from the production.
からうまくこう受け取ってくれてるのかなっていう気がしてますけども。求めてるレベルが非常に
Everyone demanded such a high level. When it was all done, I felt such satisfaction to show everyone the finished project.
It's a huge privilege to be able to be a part of that.
And it's a good memory to make, something to tell my children about.
I think this re-release of LUNAR is going to be big.
It's more or less, oh my gosh, brain fart. What did you even say?
Take two.
Yeah, 3.
Good. Look busy. Oh, come on, give it some emotion.
Yes, sir.
And action.
And so, I've totally lost my thought here.
答えまして。
I can relate to that. Molesting the goddess Athena. It's all so exciting.
He's dead based on the fact that he lost his life.
Let's do that one more time, please.
He's dead because he died.
But that's a spoiler, don't use that.
Okay. It was really good. I got a nice shirt out of the whole thing, which is kind of cool. You know, I can say, hey, you know, I was in that game. I won't have a nice car to drive or any other clothes to wear, but I'll have the shirt.
You didn't hear that, did you? She was just this bodacious, pink-haired bimbo.
And then, well, that's pretty much it, actually.
Well, that quite a journey, don't you think?
It touched upon some things that were touched that like people had questions about earlier, like the what the boat song meant and stuff like that. So that was kind of nice that it touched on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like we touched on earlier, Working Designs definitely had their hands in the soup a lot more than other localizers of the time. Maybe a little bit too much so in some ways too, but yeah, we'll definitely touch on that here soon. So we talked about the music. We had a little bit more context about the development and the localization of the game. I do have one question that immediately comes to mind. I don't think this is true for any of us here, but chat, has anybody played LUNAR starting with the Sega CD version and then played Silver Star Story Complete? And if so, what was your impressions going from the Sega CD version to the new version? Like, how did that compare? Because to me, that seemed like such a... It's a really significant upgrade from the original. Silver Star on Sega CD was definitely quite groundbreaking at its time. You know, it was in that, you know, transition to CD media. You know, even though the Sega CD was renowned for having a really slow CD-ROM and there wasn't a whole lot of throughput there, the amount of storage space that you had available, people were, you know, obviously upping the audiovisual game at that time. So, let's see.
Follow-up question. If you could tell me where that pink-haired girl comes from so I can avoid it, that would be great.
Oh yeah, that's terrible. Where's she at so I know not to go there? I don't know. She definitely wasn't from the game. It must have been one of the other Working Designs games that they worked on.
Looks like Wandervox, and hi, by the way. Looks like he played the original and then through, and then actually looks like Galleon played the original after complete, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Looks like we have a few people.
I have to imagine when Silver Star first came out on the Sega CD, it was quite a revelation. Within 5 to 7 years, though, so much was changing about the video game landscape. Silver Star Story Complete is really just a thorough touching up of the original game, because even though Silver Star, when it first came out, seems like it would have been innovative. It suffered from some of the issues of other Sega games, so that the Genesis and the Sega CD had a limited color palette compared to, like, say, the Super Nintendo and later systems too. So
it's a little more than just a touch-up, isn't it? They added whole scenarios and extra characters and all that stuff.
all that, full animation and everything, that had to have been, quite the glow up.
They really did make it complete, as it were.
Indeed. So we've come a long way here, especially you, Nicole. You've once again journeyed through the game at a different stage in your life now. Now that you've done it all over again, what are your overall thoughts?
Well, I kind of went into this with a little bit of apprehension, to be completely honest. I think I had mentioned this to both of you before. I was afraid going back into it, I would kind of be like, oh, well, that was a different period of my life, and I've grown as a gamer. My tastes have changed, my skill has changed, and so I was worried I was going to go back to it and be like, this is so like, my memory was that it was just very simplistic and very. There wasn't a lot of bells and whistles that made the combat system funky and stuff like that. But honestly, going back into it, I was very pleasantly surprised. Not just the story, which was familiar and fantastic to me, but I actually really found myself enjoying the combat as well. There's a lot more strategy than I remembered. Not that it suddenly appeared to me that it wasn't there before, but I just remember being like, oh yeah, I remember I actually did use some strategy to it. I liked a lot of the tweaking you could do to your party layout on the battle when it started. So you would move characters around depending on who you were fighting. Now, I will say, for the purpose of the stream, there were a lot of telegraphs that the enemies would do, that depending on what animation they were doing, you knew what attack they were going to do. And if you knew what they were, you could avoid attacks completely. I didn't bother, because I didn't feel like needed to. I was kind of stayed on the top of making sure I was leveled enough so that I would survive pretty much. But if you wanted to play more conservatively in your leveling, you could avoid attacks just by where you moved your characters, and that was fun.
I think I had a slightly different take on the combat system here, because it seemed like to me, within the first turn or two, your initial formation and your decisions seemed to matter, but after the first couple of turns, when you have enemies kind of going all over the screen, it starts to, any tactics that you may have had going into the battle start to kind of fall apart, and you just start to play it by ear.
Yes, in a way, but so for example, I'll just say the Royce boss battle. If she's standing a certain way, you know that she's going to do an attack in front of her. So you can move your characters out of the way of in front of her, and kind of in the moment and for that turn, and still avoid that attack so no one gets hit by it. Or you can just take the hit if you want to, and that's what I ended up doing, because I couldn't be bothered, just because I did want to keep the stream going.
Sure.
But if you really wanted to be a perfectionist about it, you could play it very differently to make sure, and it was probably a much more efficient way to do it. So I feel kind of bad about that, but
I think I might have.
Bad about that.
Yeah, I think I just about stepping your toes again. Selbek, what were you about to say?
I don't think I was about to say anything.
No? Okay, I felt like I about cut in right as you were about to say something earlier about the combat.
If I did, I've already forgotten.
I don't know. I guess I could see where you're coming from. If you really wanted to min-max, or even, dare say, try to speedrun this game, there is some nuance to be had there. the takeaway that I had watching you play through it again is that aside from those first couple of vital turns, it really just turns into spam this ability until you run out of the MP to do so sort of ordeal. And I think that other RPGs have done positional combat better. You know, Chrono Trigger comes to mind, but that's not even fair because it's, you know, Chrono Trigger, kind of in a milieu of its own. I did find the combat, and I found the gameplay of the game to be kind of the least interesting part of LUNAR. I think that it is a great 90s Disney anime that just happens to have a game built in my personal opinion. It's not offensive. Like, it's fine. You know, it's, you know, definitely an RPG of the mid to late 90s, and, you know, it's okay. I just didn't really... I do remember back in the day that I was always excited to see the next block of the story unfold, but combat was kind of take it or leave it.
Yeah, I was kind of afraid that that's what I would think too. And to a certain extent, I agree. You are right, and it is probably the least remarkable thing about the game. But I just was expecting worse. I guess I was expecting to be like, "Wow, this is boring. Wow, this is too simple." But it did pleasantly surprise me that it still held itself up to a certain extent. So overall, I would say I was pleasantly surprised. I'm not saying that it's fantastic and the combat was so great and challenging, because it wasn't. It wasn't, especially if you just take the time to level and grind a little bit. But I was pleasantly surprised. I thought I would kind of go back and be like, oh, he can never go home. But I'm glad I did. So.
I was wondering the same thing too as Grimace, how Harmony compares to Superstar Story Complete. The only thing that I know about Harmony is that it has a kind of limit break system. I believe that's accurate, correct?
I don't remember. It's been a long time.
Okay. Yeah, so I did a lot of thinking, like, the last game that we did, Vagrant Story, was a game that had oodles of gameplay and was being incredibly ambitious about what it wanted to do with that gameplay and how it wanted to connect to the story. And we discussed that at length. I won't retread that ground, but that was a game that aimed for the stars, didn't quite get there, which kind of hurt its overall rating in the end. And Lunar's a kind of game that really, in terms of its gameplay, doesn't have too much ambition at all. Like Gallion said, it really focuses on the story. The gameplay is completely secondary, which I think is going to hurt my review in the end. But I guess it's better that it knows what it wants to be, and at least it executes that competently, instead of like trying all this sort of stuff that just doesn't really work well together.
Yeah.
I gotta say, this game has just enough, for the era, has just enough of the cutscenes and the voice acting and everything that makes me want them to make a series out of this.
I could definitely see something like
Speaking
this
of anime.
going to Netflix with a little bit of exposition, and maybe the writers coming back and fleshing this world out a little bit more. What do you think?
Getting a little bit more of a professional voice cast.
But they have to get John Truitt back. They have to get him back.
Oh, absolutely. I think in a scenario like that, it would be great to bring all of the original voice actors back, even if they don't necessarily play their original roles, but they have like little cameos.
Yeah,
I think that would be fun.
Like Charles Martinet in the Mario movie.
I don't
Yeah,
remember
my take on the voice acting, as you can see in the video, they're clearly having a good time doing this. John Truitt, he's clearly a talented voice actor. So any of the complaints that I have coming up are not, they're not really an attack on the people, because in some cases, like Truitt, he knows what he's doing. He's just given the material that he has to work with, and some of them weren't even professional voice actors at all. Like the lady that played the speaking voice of Luna, she was just a friend of a friend, and Victor Ireland came to her and said, "Hey, you want to work on a video game?" She's like, "Oh yeah, sure, don't you know?" And the rest is history. So that's you can't really fault somebody if that's not their bread and butter and they're just, volunteering on a passion project. I think there's something that's respectable about that.
That's why I respect Resident Evil.
Well, that's actually a really good point, because there is a lot more offensive, terrible voice acting back in the day that contemporary with Lunar, that this game stands, above and beyond. I don't think the voice acting's very good though, personally.
It's not. I agree.
But it's almost it's almost to the point that there's that charm to it, because that this is kind of a low key outfit studio that's just trying to do the best they can with the resources that they have, and with the changes that Working Design puts in their localization, some of this voice acting is kind of so bad it's good.
Yeah, but it's consistent, and I think that really lends to the entire experience.
Yeah, I mean,
and
sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just, I think during one of the playthroughs, I think Gallian had mentioned that like Mia had like no passion in her voice whatsoever, to the point where like now that her reading of Mia is almost kind of like how I view Mia. It like became a personality trait for her. It's just that she's kind of bland, and I don't know. I think that's kind of charming. But I agree with you. It wasn't the best quality of voice acting.
Oh, at the end of the day, these are just nerdy little kids that have been put in the position that they have to save the world. I mean, it's they're awkward teenagers, even though they talk about in the making of that they were aged up just for the love plot to make sense and not be weird. But they're awkward teenagers.
It was still weird,
just like the a little bit, but they're awkward teenagers,
especially
just
with
like
Kyle and Jessica. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, they're awkward teenagers, just like the target audience of this game. Awkward teenagers, like me when I first played it.
And like me when I first played this game.
And like me, wait.
Yeah, so it seemed like when you were playing the game, towards the end there, you were really starting to struggle with inventory management. Is that fair to say?
Oh, the inventory management system has always been a little bit janky, and even before the end, it just got even harder towards the end. So the problem is that you can't just equip something straight. You have to have it in their inventory first, because each person will have an individual inventory. And then they have Null as the mule, so it'll be the sword or the shield or the bow or whatever will go probably into Null's inventory. Then you have to move it from Null to the other person's inventory, and that other person probably already has a full inventory, so you have to move something out of their inventory to make room for that. You have to kind of juggle it around, and it definitely gets very tiresome very quickly. The problem I was running into at the end was that Null got full. Like, there was only so much space on Null, so when it came to getting a new item, you had to find an item to drop. That took time. Then you had to switch by moving another item from a character onto Null, which meant you had to either drop or use another item. So then there was space to move the new thing, and it was a pain in the neck.
It's just a whole thing.
It was a whole thing, and it was definitely one of my least favorite things about. And I don't remember. I'm sure you're right, Gallian. I'm sure Harmony fixes that, but. It definitely was a thing. It's always been a thing. But yeah.
It just seems so weirdly arbitrary too. I mean, was that like a carryover from the Sega CD version? Because I could definitely understand, you have very limited read-write speed. Even though you have all that space on disk, you have very limited memory and bandwidth on the Sega CD, but it would seem like by the PlayStation they would have that sorted out.
Yeah.
They'd have the music restarting when you enter or exit a home in a town too, but here we are.
Yeah,
I guess so. I mean, memory was still very much at a premium back then, but it seems like a couple of extra kilobytes to better manage your inventory would have been a good trade-off for something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's fair to say, the vibe of the game, the look and the sound and the feel of the game definitely transcends the gameplay, because just speaking on the gameplay, it's perfectly average. When I first, so Skunkworks brings up the good point here. Where is it? All those bromides. It's so funny that you said that, because here are my notes. I'm going to read verbatim. Inventory management can get to be a drag. in parentheses, holding on to all those bromides. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you're gonna have to suffer and yell around a little bit, the very least that you ought to get out of that is a little bit of anime TNA goodness, right?
Yeah, yeah. I at least have like a key items slot that doesn't take up inventory space.
Right, right. But
those Ronos.
It's anime titties, y'all. I mean, you know, it's worth the trouble. You know.
I'm not comfortable talking about children like that.
Okay.
Well, the Three Witches, they're not children, and they're absolutely stunning.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah, although I will have to say...
I don't think Zenobia is, but I don't know about Royce or Phaecia.
Yeah, like, I don't know, and then Nash carrying around the picture of Mia's ankles, that was a little strange, too.
But those ankles. But no, I don't think Phaecia is either, because I think someone said she has big mommy energy, and I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? But no, I understand, but it was something really fun going through and making sure that you had the perfect timing to go and collect all the bromaids, and I was not going to get rid of a single one of them, so, you know, those herbs had to go.
Now, are the bromides present in Harmony?
No.
I just, like, I'm you know,
Yeah,
I keep...
that's the version to play.
Yeah, I was about to say, I keep comparing all the different versions together to see how, like, LUNAR progresses over the years, and yeah, I think if, like, the game were to get a sequel now, we probably wouldn't see bromides, because, yeah, you know, when they came out, it was, you know, there's a very specific audience of people playing this game, and it wouldn't have been weird, it wasn't weird for me to see that kind of stuff when I was 16, but yeah, looking back, it's like,
right.
That's a little problematic, but, yeah, just shows how much the landscape has changed. I mean, it changed so much just over what was it, like 5 or 7 years between the original LUNAR coming out and Silver Star Story Complete.
Mm-hmm. I would love maybe a sequel, but if they decided to, like, I don't want to say reboot because that could mean anything, but if they decided to remake the 4 LUNAR games that exist, I would love to see it in a 2.5 HD style that Square Enix is kind of heralding with games like Octopath Traveler or the Dragon Quest III remake that still hasn't released that I know of.
Live Alive 2, if that is how that's pronounced.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that would be...
I don't know.
I'd be down for that. Be absolutely down for that. So
I don't remember the bromides being in Harmony, but Galleon says they are. But I will defer to him. I just don't remember them.
Yeah, so I think my takeaway, watching you play this again, it reaffirmed, you know, the things that I liked about it when I first played it myself. It reaffirmed some things that I didn't like about the game at the time that I played it. And now, you know, having like 20, you know, almost 25 years of time that's passed since then, and all the, you know, games and the tropes that we've seen come and go since then. I have to say, like, there's a lot of stuff here that would probably just doom this to being a bargain bin game, but there's just so much heart here. You know, clearly the people that made this, it's not a story that really breaks any norms. It doesn't cover a lot of amazing ground. Even, you know, at the time of Silver Star Story Complete, I mean, there were some incredible RPGs making it stateside that almost made it seem look a little quaint. But I have to stress that for my complaints about this game, it still makes you feel good. It's the perfect comfort game, and I did a lot of kind of back and forth about the changes that working designs make to their games and, you know, how appropriate they are. And by and large, I don't think that that's a good way of handling your localizations. It's like, just take the core bits and throw out everything else and Americanize it. It's not good, but there is, you know, if you take the cheesy, if you take the cheesy references out, but just leave the efforts in that they were trying to make to take these characters' personality traits and kind of bring them a little bit more to the forefront, I think there is something respectable about that there.
I agree.
Like, to a lesser degree, look at the Ted Woosley localizations for Final Fantasy. Look at like the anime series of the 90s. Look at Sailor Moon. They butchered that series to try and Americanize it. That was just the idea at the time. Now they're a lot smarter about it. They keep the story intact. They don't butcher what's there. They keep it as they can, and some things are edited for the sake of the audience they're gearing towards that aren't okay. But yeah, back in the 90s, they just cut it to make more sense, in the English flow of language.
Instead of making, people actually go and learn about culture, they just,
Yeah, Valiant's right.
that-
It definitely paid off for Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
Sure, but I think that Working Design's localization philosophy is almost born as a reaction against the Ted Woolsey way of translating things. I can see where you're like drawing that comparison, but the reason that I don't think that works is that Woolsey's translation style was born out of two factors. You have this overbearing company, Nintendo, that has these standards that they expect all of their developers to follow, and you can't really get off of that path. You can't make the kind of references that Working Designs was making in their games.
That's true. That's true.
You also were extremely limited in terms of memory and cartridge space and RAM in the Super Nintendo. So you had to make a lot of stylistic decisions on how you convey meaning and feeling. And Working Designs doesn't really have that excuse because, aside from the bandwidth and the RAM limitations, they have all the space in the world to work with here. And the choices they make they were just choices. They didn't have to make those choices, but they chose to.
Well, sure, but the guy who they had on screen from the actual technical portion that was doing the text and stuff said that they were pretty limited because of the sentence structure of Japanese versus English. I don't think they had the ability to recode that to add extra lines of dialogue. I think they had to fit it within the same amount of box prompts that the original version in Japanese had. And I could be wrong, but that's what I was picking up by the way he was explaining things in the making of.
I guess I feel like we're talking about two different things here, like the technical limitations of displaying, the right amount of information on screen. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you there. I do wish they had, maybe been a little bit more chill and less cavalier with, again, how fast and loose they were playing with the plot. But I guess it doesn't. I would love to see another translation take on this game. But having said that, I don't think it hurts the game, and I do think that the intention was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Galleon does raise the point. I don't know how you feel about this, but he says he thinks that Working Designs took liberties where it didn't matter and stayed faithful when it did. And he doesn't care about things like 100% accurate townspeople dialogue. Just when it mattered, they stayed faithful, but they took liberties elsewhere.
I mean, that's true. I mean, we grew up with the game, though. I have to wonder, though, if you took this game as it is right now, the PS1 version, put it in front of somebody, Gen Y, Gen Z, and I wonder what their take would be on it. If they would feel a little bit lost and alienated by some of these references, just they didn't grow up with it. It might stand in the way of the plot, but I don't know, maybe not.
I don't know, man. That's a good question. I have a 10-year-old who loves and laughs at so many things that have references that he knows nothing about. He just laughs because he's taught by his peers that it's funny. So who knows? Who knows? Something could hit and then it becomes a thing within somebody in Gen Alpha. And they don't know why. They just know that, hey, I'm supposed to laugh and that's funny. Oh, look, he said it.
Maybe. So, chat, I'm going to ask you guys, if you could rate LUNAR on a scale of 5, what would you rate it? And I'll also pose that question to you guys. What would you say your final rating of LUNAR is?
Well, Scott, you go first.
Oh, in my chat today? Okay.
I thought you said it also to you guys, so I thought that was us too. Sorry.
Yes.
No, that's my fault. It's my fault. I would give it probably a 7.5, I would say. Out of 10.
I'm going to take your word for it that the math checks out there.
All right. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
I completely ignored the fact that it was out of 5.
Okay, let's do this again. Out of 5, what would you rate it?
3.
Okay.
What about you, Nicole?
I was dreading this moment out of all of the other moments of this entire postmortem. I don't want to say, oh, I agree with Galleon, but I do. I agree with Galleon. It's 5 because of nostalgia. It will always be nostalgia. It has a lot of things about it that make it special. So I was talking, this stream has been really special for me alone, just because I've gotten back in touch with some really old friends like Ham and Galleon and Grimace. Like, the 4 of us were huge friends back in, the day. And we hadn't really talked together as a group for a really long time, but we have gotten a group going together again.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Also, I don't mean to stop you, but an anonymous gifter is out there just throwing subscriptions at people. Thank you so much for your patronage.
Yeah, thank you.
And congratulations to Gnarly Bark.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, congratulations, Dakota. Also, but like I was saying, we started talking again, and we at one point had a conversation where we were talking, and that we all agreed that there is just something about this game. There's something about LUNAR that has brought people together, and not just us, like the 4 of us, but also it has brought other people together in my life, and it's made a difference to them too. So to say that this game is special is an understatement. There is something about it. There's just something about it that I will never, ever forget. And
now put a number to it.
To put a number to it, like I said, for nostalgia, 5 out of 5. As someone who played the game as a 41-year-old woman for the first time in years, going back into it, I was pleasantly surprised, but it was not perfect. There were flaws. It was a little bit repetitive. There are some janky inventory systems, so I will give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay. That's
still not bad. Not bad.
No,
I would definitely recommend it.
That's really good. I think any game, if you sat down and made a game and put it out there to the world, and somebody gave you a 4 out of 5 rating, that would feel really flattering. I mean,
yeah.
We talked about this during Vagrant Story, that I think it's okay to normalize good and really good games getting 3.5, 3, even 4 ratings. Not everything has to be a 5, and not everything that's worth playing has to be a 4. I've done a lot of back and forth on this game the last couple days as I've sat here writing notes and thinking about the time that I spent watching you play. And I have to say, I loved watching you guys get back together and nerd out. Like, it was so cool to just sit back and just listen and watch as you guys shared your love of this game. I regret nothing. So I know at one point, I think you you apologized to me after a stream one night, and I said, no, that was fantastic. That was LUNAR is an old friend. It's like going home and getting together with one of your childhood friends and reminiscing and having a chance to look at those experiences from a new perspective in our lives really was something that was wonderful. I have to say, you guys have motivated me here with some of your arguments, and I don't mean to shit all over Working Designs, because despite my problems with their translation choices, you guys saw it yourself. If you got this game, you got this beautiful leather-bound manual, a substantive manual nonetheless, that didn't leave anything out in terms of giving you all the tools that you needed to succeed at this game. Gave you this beautiful cloth map. You got the making of disc. You got a soundtrack disc. And you got this game that just got a complete and total remakeover from its Sega CD games. I mean, what is there that's not to love? If you already liked LUNAR from the old days, you would have been absolutely thrilled to have this. And even today, if you could like get a complete box version of this, there's just a level of artistry and effort that went into this game that even if I don't agree with every decision that they made, I see it and I respect it. I went into tonight prepared to give LUNAR just a 3 out of 5, which I think is, I don't think that that's a bad game. A 3 out of 5 game has some issues, or maybe in this case, it didn't age well in some ways. And, you know, at the end of the game, it is still, at the end of the day, it's still a game. And I don't necessarily think a game should be content to take a backseat to its narrative. It should also be fun to play. It's the thing that sets it apart from just being a 90s anime. And I would have liked to have seen more interesting combat mechanics out of this. But again, you know, I also gave Vagrant Story a 3 out of 5 because, but for a completely different reason. That game was so ambitious and it failed at a lot of its marks, but it tried. This game doesn't necessarily try so much to wow you with its gameplay. It wants you to feel something. And you know, every time I boot up that game and I hear wings, you got to be dead on the inside if you don't feel something. If you don't feel something watching Winds Nocturne. So LUNAR makes me feel something, and watching you guys reminisce and play this game together and feel something again felt really wonderful. So I'm going to change my initial take here and give this a 3.5 out of 5. I think that's a great game. That's a game that you could share with somebody. Maybe not everybody would love it the way that you do, but somebody will.
Yeah, and I have to correct myself because I would give it a 7 out of 10, which is a 3.5 out of 5, not a 3. And also, I think we should, just as a tangent, we should normalize the halfway point of a scale, meaning an average but playable game.
Mm-hmm.
We should normalize that. I in my opinion, a 5 out of 10 shouldn't be a garbage game. Right. It shouldn't, not at all. It's a terrible mindset. And yeah, like you said, a 2.5 to 3 out of 5 is a respectable, playable game. Should be. Issues here and there, but still, you know, a good time should be had.
I think I think the difference for me, and this is objectively speaking, because it'll always be a 5-star game in my opinion for like pure nostalgia and feels. But took it from a 3.5 to a 4 for me is that it was a little aggravating having to deal with like the inventory system, and there were a couple other things about it that were a little bit aggravating, but I never once played the game and think to myself, ugh, now I have to do this. I don't want to do this. You know, and I didn't dislike anything. So it didn't wow me, but I never felt like I was frustrated or playing something I didn't want to be playing, which I've played many, many games that I would call great games. I'd call them, you know, 4-star games or 3-star games or whatever. But there was always like a part of the game that I'd be like, I hate this part. I just want to get through this part as fast as possible and just move on. Yeah, but I didn't really have that in LUNAR.
I ran into that a lot with Vagrant Story. That was a game that's like, I respect so much about it, but goddamn, I'm going to be ready for this to be finished. Whereas here, I never didn't look forward to tuning into a stream. And a lot of that is thanks to you because you gave us such a good performance. But, you know, the game just, it just hits you in the feels.
If I had to name a part that feels like it would have really just turned me off and been a slog, it would have been that final dungeon. All the locked rooms, all the forced battles, it's just a couple rooms, but you spend what felt like an hour in each one. Yeah, that would have been my biggest complaint if I were the one playing.
I think I agree. I did not like the locked rooms because it's like, well, the whole point is that there is supposed to be like a little tiny bit of strategy there where you feel like, oh, I escaped this battle. Woo. But that being said, my least favorite part was probably Might's Tower. I was getting ready to throw the controller while I was trying to find my way around that maze.
And I wonder how much of that had to do with the fact that, you know, I have to reiterate again, Working Designs made a lot of changes to this game, and one of the changes that I don't think people talk enough about is that they beefed up a lot of the enemies here. Like some of them, yeah, well, really many of them. If you go to, let's see, it's a website that is called, it's going to drive me crazy. We've had this conversation last time too, but there's a website that talks about all of the cut and like omitted and dummied out content from video games, and it's driving me crazy that I can't remember the name of it, but they give a really good breakdown of all the enemies that got buffs, and like many of them were like, 50% more powerful, but it didn't really, it kept battles from being a face roll, but at the same time, it really just seemed like a lot of these fights just were MP sponges, and you were just ready for the fights to be over with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cutting Room Floor, that's the name of the website. Thank you.
That's the one.
Through. Cutting Room Floor, great website. Ought to check out the
great YouTube channel.
Yeah. So, having said all this, there was a sequel to LUNAR. Nicole, I have to imagine at some point you're going to be sharing that with us. That's pretty much given, right?
I would absolutely love to play LUNAR 2 Eternal Blue for everyone here at the Valiant Gamers that follows the Valiant Gamers website, that follows the Valiant Gamers YouTube and Twitch channels. I would love to do that. I was ready to go. So I was talking with Scott actually about his upcoming game of the month, and I think you were talking about like how stressed you out you were because you had like a bunch of stuff going on. You're playing a bunch of games, and you have
just one game.
Well, yeah, well, you know what I mean. Playing a lot of that one game, and you said that like I don't know if I'm gonna have time because I still have to get ready for the stream, and I'm like, just say the word. I'll just go segue right into Eternal Blue, and I will gladly do that. That'll give you another month or two to just, get ready for your game of the month. But, you're like, no, I got it. So it's like, fair enough. But I would love to do that. I would really, really love to do that. Especially because I know now for the first time in like history, I learned very astonishingly that you've never even played Eternal Blue, Barry. So I would love to play that.
I am attached enough to this story that I'm ready to see more. So, without spoiling anything, can you tell us if LUNAR 2 is a direct sequel, or is it just in the same world and set in a different time?
It is kind of a direct sequel. There are some recurring characters from the first game.
Okay.
But it takes place 1,000 years after the first game. So you from that you have to know that the characters that are recurring are going to be magical characters, but I think it has just the amount of no, Ramus is not in it. Sadly.
Oh, why did you have to tell me that? Oh.
I said no spoilers.
I'm sorry.
Best character in the game. Let's go on an adventure. Well, I'm going to stay here and do a shop. Bye.
Hey, capitalism is an adventure in itself.
That's true. That is true.
But yeah, no, I think it has it balances the line of having nostalgia for the first game, but introducing some new characters. The characters of LUNAR 2 overall are great. Are they as memorable and special as the first game? No, they're not. Nothing will ever replace the original gang. But there are some really great characters that have great dialogue. The story is very good. It goes a lot more into the history of LUNAR, the Blue Star, the Silver Star, the relationship between the two of them.
That's what I would be more interested in anyway.
Yeah, I know.
They really just slapped the Blue Star and the Green Earth just in your face towards the end.
Yeah.
They just slapped it on there like, hey, by the way, there's history to this world.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And I, for one, am eager to see how the gameplay has evolved too, and to see how they differ in that regard.
There's a couple of little quote unquote quality of life upgrades and downgrades, but it's overall the same game.
Oh, so inventory is still shit?
I don't remember that changing. I might be wrong, but I don't remember that changing too much. They changed the saves. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was going to ask, what about the music going from one screen to the next where the music would be the same?
I don't remember that as well.
Okay, well, that's a reason to play.
Exactly. I got a reminder of what was important to me this last month. So I'd like to thank everyone who watched for letting me experience that again.
Well, I would be
It's really
looking
cool.
forward to that because, I pretty much saw most of Silver Star's story. I was content to just watch it unfold in front of me, but Eternal Blue is probably something that I would play along with you. And I would definitely encourage chat, too, for any viewers that watch our streams. Don't hesitate to play along. We would love to see you guys and the takes that you have to share as well.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so we're probably about to wrap up for the night, but since we briefly touched on it earlier, I do believe we have another game of the month coming up. Scott, what have you got in store for us?
Yeah, so I remember us talking about this a little bit with the Vagrant Story postmortem, where I wasn't too sure. I was thinking, maybe I'll do an RPG because I've been kind of on an RPG kick for the last year or so,
right?
Maybe 2 years. But also, it's my birthday month, and I'll probably just want to take it easy. Well, I thought March was going to ease up, and I was gonna have some time to relax, or at least feel like I relaxed, and all of the spare time I've been able to give to myself outside of obligations and everything else and doing stuff with my family, I have just been trying to cram Final Fantasy VII Rebirth under my belt. Phrasing. And it's
That's an interesting way to enjoy a game I'm not going to do.
Yeah. It's a very long game if you're trying to do all the side stuff, and I am, because I find all of it engaging, and I'm really loving how they've tied in the world building to all the side stuff.
Right.
It's been really good. I'm wrapping up chapter 12 out of 14, and I feel like, and I could be wrong, and God forbid I am, but I feel like the last two chapters, just like in Final Fantasy VII Remake, are going to be fairly linear. So I can finish up all the side stuff that I'm trying to get done in chapter 12 and then beeline to the ending. Regardless of whether or not I have it done before April starts and we kick off the next game of the month, I'm going to be doing the game of the month. I'll be setting time aside for that instead of this one game I'm trying to battle anyway, it's Mega Man Legends.
I'm really excited to see that. I have heard much about Mega Man Legends. I remember seeing screenshots from reviews back in the day. Never did get a chance to play it myself. For the reason that I didn't finish LUNAR Silver Star story, my PS1 shit the bed, and I did miss out on like half a generation of games there, and Mega Man Legends was definitely one of them. I'm excited.
Me too.
Yeah, there was a magazine back in the day, official PlayStation magazine, and it came with a demo disc every month with demos to all the upcoming games. Well, not all of them, but a few of the upcoming games. And one of them had Mega Man Legends on it. And I popped that sucker in and I played all the other demos. And then I went for Mega Man Legends, and it just has the opening cutscene and then the opening sequence that you get to play through with a little boss before it fades to black and says to be continued. But I was freaking enamored. And at the time, I have to say, like, the gameplay was a lot of fun. It was tank controls, but it was like action, and some platforming. And man, I'm smiling ear to ear right now because I loved the game so much back in the day. And I know it's not going to hold up as well as I think it will, but I think it's going to be a good time. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it, and I hope everybody else has a lot of fun watching me go through it.
Oh, you know it. I mean, that, you kind of like remember the early days of the NES, how every sequel that was coming out for like, the big series like Castlevania, Mario, the sequels were taking, their respective series in completely different directions than where they started. And you almost kind of get a little bit of a whiff of that with Mega Man Legends because, Mega Man's kind of done one thing and one thing only, this run and gun platform style, gameplay, and it just seems like Mega Man Legends was, such a big departure from its roots that had to have been at least a little exciting.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Well,
oh yeah.
As soon as we get more details as to when you'll be starting that, you will definitely hear it from us. But to hear it from us, you have to go to a little place called Valiant Gamers, and you can go to Valiant Gamers by going to valiantgamers.com.
How do you go to valiantgamers.com?
Well, as I just so happen to do, I have a convenient link in Twitch chat for all of you guys to follow.
And just as a reminder, I'm sure that most of you are already, and I really, really, really appreciate your support. But if you like this stream, if you like the stream I've been doing for the past month, and you want to see the upcoming stream of Mega Man Legends, make sure to throw this channel a follow. And then we also have our own personal streams. Mine is LUNAR Nicole. I've been talking in chat. If you want to throw that a follow, Random Encounter, he's also has his own stream, and Cellbake Streams has his own channel.
With two underscores, no less.
Yes, 2 underscores, yes.
Because one is just
definitely 2 underscores between Random and Encounter.
That's right.
Yes.
Just to throw that out there. And mine is just Cellbake Streams. Just add streams to the end of Cellbake and you got it.
But yeah, definitely throw this channel and those other channels a follow. And we will keep on bringing as much content as we can to you. And definitely check out valiantgamers.com, because we are streaming because we love these games and we love the music of these games, but also just want a really nice community where we can all hang out. And that's what we're trying to create at valiantgamers.com. So
absolutely. And once again,
thank you for everyone who's joined.
Absolutely. And Nicole,
yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you so much. Thank you so much for sharing LUNAR with us. It was a pleasure. Thanks everyone to the audience that showed up for our streams and showed up tonight. We do this for you guys. So please, head over to Valiant Gamers and let us know what you want us to play. And perhaps we can have some other guest streamers come on and share some of their favorite games with us too during our Game of the Month streams.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I am Random Encounter.
I'm Althena.
I'm Cellbake.
And thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, you guys have a wonderful evening.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.